Hello class, welcome back. Today we're going to look at some influential thinkers from the Enlightenment time period. Now, these are individuals who changed the way of life through the way that they think. And you'll see a lot of their ideas are evident today and help influence many governments, including the United States government. But before we get into the notes, we're going to do a foldable today. We're looking at 7 individuals. 7 individuals. You can see here I have Enlightenment thinkers, the 7 flaps, and then you will put their names on each flap. Now you can do this horizontally or vertically, whichever way you would prefer to do it. But underneath each flap, you will put the notes from today and a picture that corresponds with what that person stood for or what they were fighting for. Now, we're going to look at the notes. The Enlightenment time period, or the Age of Reason. By the end of this, you should be able to generalize, discuss what the Enlightenment was, describe at least 2 key contributors. Like I said, we're going to talk about 7, but you should be able to pick 2 and analyze their impact throughout. So we're going to look at what is the Enlightenment, 2 major individuals, Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, how they vastly differ with one another, and then the other philosophies, which is how we get to 7 individuals. But before I continue, what I want you to do, I want you to ask yourself, are people born good, or are people and learn how to be bad? Or are they born bad and learn how to be good? And I want you to think about that, and I want you to decide which side of that debate are you on. You can't say it depends. No, I want you to pick a side, and I want you to argue that side. And I want you, as we continue through this, I want you to see if your mind changes, if your opinion changes. And I'm not going to tell you which side of the debate I'm on. I want you to have an opinion, and I want you to argue that opinion. But just see if it changes. Now, scientific revolution, which we had previously talked about, the Renaissance and the Reformation as well. The Renaissance, all of this ties into the Enlightenment because the Renaissance was a rebirth in learning. People start thinking that learning is a new big thing. It's important. We should go into it. It inspires curiosity. People start to question things, which is how we got to the Reformation. Scholars start questioning ideas, things that they had been told, things that had just been accepted for hundreds of years. And so they take this idea of questioning and they apply it to religion, which is how we got the Reformation. And people start to question things about God and what's being taught to them. And then they start reading the Bible and interpreting it on their own. And that got us to the scientific revolution, which is where we develop these new ways of thinking. And we take this new way of thinking and the scientific method specifically, and we start to apply it to other things. Once the scientific revolution happens and things that were just generally accepted for hundreds of years are proven to be false, specifically the helio versus geocentric models and thought process, we start to apply the scientific method to things outside of science. And we start experimenting and researching and determining various things on our own. And we apply it to society, people, government, politics, religion, economics and money, even education. And it just starts to change the way that people operate, the way that people think. And all of a sudden, these things that have just been accepted are no longer just accepted for the way that they are. And so that brings on the Enlightenment, which is one of your vocab words, a new intellectual movement that stressed reason and thought and the power for individuals to solve problems. So it's a movement that encouraged people to think on their own, to think and reason and come up with solutions on their own, as opposed to just asking, being told what the answer was and accepting it. the Enlightenment encourages people to go about finding the answer. Find the answer. Interpret these things on your own. Don't just accept this teaching because that's the way that it is. Go look it up. Go find things that prove what you believe is true or what you believe is false. And so you can see here that the scientific revolution leads to the Enlightenment. All of a sudden, this Enlightenment ideology, which we just talked about, of questioning ideas and coming up with new ways of thinking, leads to a spread of ideas, which will eventually lead to the American Revolution and other revolutions after that. Which brings us to Old Man Hobbes. He reminds me of just an old grumpy man telling you to get off his lawn. But Thomas Hobbes believed that all humans were naturally selfish and wicked and evil, and they were just born that way. And because of that, they needed a strong government to step in and say, no. They were born evil and wicked, and if there wasn't a strong government in charge, they would remain evil and wicked, and nothing would be accomplished. Hobbes believed in a social contract. This is where people would give the government total control. Total control to say, this is how the government's going to run, this is what we're going to do. Because if not, people would act only in their self-interest. And that's that selfishness and that wickedness. And all that would be done was what benefits the individual as opposed to what benefits the whole society, when it benefits the entire country, the entire group. And so he says this social contract not only is needed, but it is necessary, because if we don't give control to a single monarch, a single individual, people are going to use their own self-interest to take over and do what's best for them and not necessarily what's best for everybody. And so this one person should be in charge of making ideas so that the group is looked out for, not people having their own ideologies. John Locke, who looks like Dobby the house elf from Harry Potter, for those of you that have ever seen the movie, John Locke believed opposite. John Locke was much more positive. Locke believed that people weren't born naturally bad. People were born naturally good, and that they learn from the experiences around them. And even a bad decision, they could learn from and improve upon. And he believed that not only are people born good, but they're born free, equal. They have certain rights that they're just born with. Not that they have to earn, but that every person is born with. And that is life, liberty, and property. Now, this is important because if you know anything about the Constitution in the United States, Thomas Jefferson, my man TJ, wait till there's a reason they don't let me teach about the Founding Fathers. Me and TJ gonna fight if I can never go back in time. But there's the TJ, Thomas Jefferson changes life, liberty, and property to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, because he believed that property should only go to rich white men. And if every person is born free and equal with the right to property, then there's nothing that puts rich white men above white women, black men, or minorities of any kind. And so he changes it, but Locke believes that everybody is born with these rights. And he starts talking about these are the rights that everybody should have. And you can see already that Locke's way of thinking makes its way to the Americas. And people start saying, hey, I wonder if we are born with natural rights. And then only America could take something like that and be as hypocritical as to say, well, some of us are. Locke believed that the purpose of the government was to protect everyone's natural rights, to protect the rights of individuals. And if the government failed to do that, then they should be overthrown. People should rise up and overthrow that government. And this becomes very important because This is how the colonists feel right before America decides to fight for their independence. They believe that they have rights. England is taking those rights away. We should fight for them. You see some other philosophies emerge. These are social critics in France. They have concepts. They argue for things that fall under 5 core beliefs: reason, nature, happiness, progress, and liberty. So what made sense? What was good for nature? What made people happy? What made the human race progress or move forward? And what was good for liberty or the rights of individuals? And so you see several of these. Voltaire is one of them. He's very brilliant, influential. He uses satire. Satire is using humor and wit to get a point across, to make a point. So if you've ever seen Family Guy, South Park, The Daily Show, these are all satirical because they do have a point and they do have a something that they're trying to shed light on, and they're doing it through a comedic and witty way. And he uses satire against the clergy, the rich, and the government, so that it takes them a minute to realize, oh, whoa, wait a minute, he's making fun of us. But the fact that he has this satirical way draws people into him. That satire attracts an audience. And so Voltaire, because he attacks the church, the rich, and the government, makes many, many, many enemies. And despite having all of these enemies that want him gotten rid of, he never stops fighting for this idea of tolerance. And people should have the right to choose, the right to reason, to come up with their own ideas. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech. He believed they should be able to practice whatever religion they wanted to practice, or at least whatever denomination. Depending on which primary source you look at, he may have been arguing just for freedom of different denominations of Christianity, but freedom of religion, freedom of speech, he was a big one for. You should be able to say, speak. You shouldn't be censored in any way. Montesquieu emerges. He believes that Britain is the best governed country, and that other countries should follow that model, and Britain has different branches of government, which is why he and Britain would influence the creation of the U.S. government. The difference is that we have a president, they have a queen, and we have a Congress, and they have a parliament. And so there are similarities between the two governments, thanks to Montesquieu. Rousseau comes to power. He's passionately committed to individual freedoms. He fights continuously for the rights of various individuals overall. Everybody should have these individual freedoms. Beccaria comes to power. He's interested in the justice system. He believes that laws should exist to preserve social order, but not to avenge crime. So it should not be a retaliatory system. It shouldn't be, well, he did this to me, so this should happen to him. It should be the laws should be severe enough to keep people from wanting to commit or break those laws. And so he fights for changes in the justice system. And then Mary Wollstonecraft comes about. She argues for women's education. She believed that women should not be second to men, that women needed education to become more virtuous, make more money, more powerful, more useful. That in order to do this, they needed education, and their education should be a priority just like that of men. And Mary Wollstonecraft, bless her heart, spoke out in a time period where that was not accepted and ends up getting her head cut off. Yep, this is her. And then afterwards, this was her. Yeah, no head. It was just here down. That's what she was after the retaliation for speaking out. Now, the result of the Enlightenment is that these writers come to challenge long-held beliefs. They challenge the church. They challenge governments. kings and queens. They challenge this idea of unequal social classes. Why is there such a big discrepancy between the rich and the poor? And why do the rich get this and the poor do not? These ideas spread like wildfire, and it ends up starting two major revolutions. It starts the American Revolution and the French Revolution. And ironically, and I'm going to talk about this when I get to the French Revolution, if France minds their own business, the French Revolution never happens. If the French government minds their own business and doesn't get involved in America's revolution, the French government never gets overthrown, one could argue. But we're going to talk more about that later. You have an assignment on Canvas and also a discussion question. I want you to go into the discussion board today after your assignment and generalize what the Enlightenment was and describe at least two of the key contributors. I want you to do this in your own words. You not copy word for word from the PowerPoint. Put it in your own words. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. And as always, you have a great day.